Welcome to Decoding Oblivion, a podcast about making sense of the tools, systems, and ideas shaping the future of marketing, crypto, and tech. We talk to founders, builders, and operators working with AI, automation, and new growth models. What's actually working, what's not, and what's coming next. I'm Eva, your host, and this is Decoding Oblivion.
What I'm observing right now, it's a huge trend for LinkedIn content, which in my humble opinion is also a little bit overhyped. Like the capacity of some of the tools such as Clay that we still use up to date, but in a very different manner. Like when we just discovered it, we started sending messages to people such as finding their HQ or their office location and then finding the nearest Starbucks and sending a message such as like, hey, if you're in Seattle, like let's catch up on that corner Starbucks. And this is something that we believed would spark more meaningful, more like warmer conversations. If it would manually sort out this whole batch of emails, we would need to hire like an entire factory or something. But with AI, it all can be done automatically. At the end of the day, the three pillars remain the same: target audience, messaging, and the channel that you're utilizing. On the positive front, I'm obviously excited for the technology, which will make things work even smoother. You just like press the button and get a lead. That's essentially the system that we're building.
Today, I'm joined by Rodi Patlis, co-founder of LeadGet, a B2B marketing agency that specializes in outbound growth and revenue intelligence. In 2025, LeadGet ranked in the top 10 of Smartlead users worldwide by replies and deals created. Rodi practices what he teaches, using the same growth systems and outbound mechanics for his own client acquisition that he deploys for his clients. His mission is to build the world's strongest client acquisition engine, one that enables companies with valuable and meaningful products to scale sustainably and prosper. Hi everyone, welcome to Decoding Oblivion. Really excited to have here with us today Rodi Patlis, the co-founder of LeadGet. Really excited to discuss a little bit more about automation, workflows, overall optimization of workflows, and overall his mission when it comes to client acquisition engines. So Rodi, really excited to have you here. Welcome. Let's start a little bit with you, how you've entered the space and what you like about so far about outreach and how things are unfolding in our industry.
First of all, thank you very much for having me here. Really excited to be here as a guest, as a speaker. When it comes to joining the industry, joining the space, I think all started when I transitioned from my product management career into more of a client-facing role. I found myself in a position when I first started as a demo engineer or something pretty technical. But then due to the shifts within the company, I was assigned to be a sales guy as well. And I quickly found myself in a position that I need to book meetings. I need to book demos in order to fulfill my quota, if it's the right term. And marketing team, if any of my previous colleagues will watch it, no offense here, respect to you a lot, love you a lot. But the pipeline they provided was not sufficient enough for me to get people on calls and to close deals. So I needed to experiment. And I started asking a lot of my friends of like, what do we do now? How the things are working, because they were in the sales space. And a buddy of mine who now happened to be my business partner and agency co-founder and our CMO, CSO, he shared one of the mechanics that he found with doing automated outreach on LinkedIn, connecting with people, sending them auto sequences and everything. And back in the days, it sounded like like magic. People were accepting your connection requests. The industry was not so oversaturated, and things worked really well. The stats were incredible. And I did start booking meetings. So this is how it happened.
That sounds great. So it always starts with a pain, right? It's like the people that know best how uncomfortable sometimes cold outreach is. They're the ones that come up with the best solutions usually. And they understand like we need to move fast. We need to, like, for example, automation. There are a lot of people that are against it or resist it still. And then the people that have actually felt the pain of trying to get to good leads or warmer leads, they know very well, or they start coming up with more intelligent and solutions that can make their life better, but also increase overall revenue. Now, the toughest question or funniest for people that have done cold outreach, what do you like the most about it? Because a lot of times people that have been into sales, right? If there's one thing you hate is the outreach, cold or warm. I mean, warm outreach is like, heaven. But what do you like most about it, about the process of setting up these workflows, the outreach and so on?
I like outcomes, really. The process, not so much. This is why I'm not an operations guy per se. I'm more of a sales guy in the end of the day. But I do believe that cold outreach works on scale. You really need, obviously, depending on your total addressable market, how many leads out there, what's the market conditions, and how relevant is your product. But essentially, what you're doing is you're find all the relevant people, send them relevant messaging, and then there is a good probability, like if you did your job well, that some of them will jump on a call. And when they jump on a call and they start saying like, this is my exact pain point, this is exactly what hurts, this is exactly what I need, that's the best feeling, because that shows you that the work that you are doing is actually meaningful, is actually valuable, and you're on the right track. So essentially getting feedback from the market is the favorite part of the job, not the cold outreach itself as a process.
And it's tough, right? It takes time sometimes to see that result. In other departments, maybe you see a little bit faster your impact, but when it comes to sales or overall any type of growth, right, it takes a little longer. And it's also sometimes if the people you're working for or you're partnered with, if they don't have that experience, they cannot see immediately your impact, so they don't understand the progress. And that's also one of the challenges of someone being a salesperson, but it comes with a journey.
Frankly speaking, once again, depending on the channel, but some of the channels are way faster than the other ones. With LinkedIn, I mean, you can get up and running within 24 hours. Our clients, our target market, these are typically mid-sized custom software development companies that were founded, I don't know, like 20 years ago, using their own book of businesses, and they flourished for a percentage of time. But then once market became oversaturated, they started struggling with demand generation. So whenever they start working with us and they start seeing so-called inbounds, because we run automations for them, and then people just like come to the calls, join the calls. So for them, it feels like an inbound. For them, this like first impressions, like these are priceless. Like they are happy, like kids that saw Santa or something.
Let's talk a little bit about LinkedIn specifically. Things have changed, right? Especially the last, I would say, 3 years, if not less. Things have changed a bit for LinkedIn. Have you seen, or how have you seen things change since you mentioned specifically LinkedIn?
Considering LinkedIn itself, I think there used to be somewhat of a hype for LinkedIn automations, and people, even if they never used it, they probably received a few auto messages that were not necessarily crafted really well. And sometimes, I don't know, there can be mistakes with names, with company they work for. So sometimes messaging can be not so relevant. And I think this massive wave of automations spoiled a little bit the impression about the automation, that it's a low quality thing that cannot be done well. So that's one thing. But what I'm observing right now, it's a huge trend for LinkedIn content, which in my humble opinion is also a little bit overhyped. I'm not the biggest content writer on LinkedIn by any means, so I'm not an expert. I only do it to create like a storefront, a visibility that we are a legit brand that posts occasionally, that there is some sort of activity. But a lot of people try to use it as a lead gen tool, writing content, and trying to share some mysteries, some tricks about the industry that will definitely work and turn everything to 180. But in my humble opinion, if you know the key, if you know exactly what works, you're definitely not screaming about it on every corner. So that's probably showing more that there is a problem within the industry, that people do struggle to find relevant leads, and they try to be louder, to be more noticeable, and they try to leverage LinkedIn content for that a lot. You've probably seen a lot of posts with them sharing a screenshot of results. By them, I'm referring to LinkedIn creators, entrepreneurs, founders, marketing departments, like everyone essentially, not in anyone specific. And they're saying like, please comment or please drop in a comment like a word and we'll get back to you. So like this is one of the biggest trends that I've seen recently. I'm not the biggest fan myself, but it's definitely something that we cannot neglect. And this is why LinkedIn becomes noisier. And LinkedIn as a platform, it was originally developed as a professional network tool, social network, for people to communicate. And LinkedIn itself, like as a company, as a parent company, they don't like that the platform started to be used heavily by automations, that people are getting a lot of messages, people are seeing a lot of irrelevant content. So they kind of start fighting with automation tools specifically. We as marketers, as salespeople, we need to stay on track of any updated privacy policies of the companies and in general the rules themselves in order to stay compliant and make sure that whatever we do, it could be on the edge, but not beyond the edge, essentially.
LinkedIn has definitely changed a lot. I agree with you. I personally believe in the more organic content. So, and that sometimes can bring very good inbounds. It doesn't have to be, so it's intentional, right? But it's not necessarily as fake or as forced as we see it right now. LinkedIn has changed a lot, a lot. It's going on a weird direction at the moment. I personally feel in terms of outreach and even a partnership outreach, it has decreased a lot the quality of conversations that we had in the past, and how much easier it was in the past to send an organic message or a more personalized message and get an answer like 80% of the time. Whereas now it's most of the messages that I get are completely irrelevant. And sometimes I have lost conversations because of that, like relevant conversations, because there are so many messages that are so irrelevant that I don't even check anymore. So hopefully they'll figure it out, even though we're in a weird journey at the moment.
I think it's our joint responsibility as marketers and the platform as well. So I think we need to contribute and set standards.
Yeah, this is what I feel. I feel people are worried and they're rushing very quickly, as you said, to get into this new trend of how we should reach out to our audience, to our ICP. While they're doing this, they're improvising a lot. They're making a lot of mistakes and they are saturating the entire industry. And eventually things, I believe, will calm down. But right now we're all just jumping in and doing anything possible because we're competing for the same customer sometimes, especially in the crypto industry, right? That it's such a niche. Maybe other industries are slightly better because it's a much larger ecosystem, but in the crypto space, especially at the crypto space, it's such a niche that it's a bloodbath, right? Competing for the same partners and the same ICP. But do you think in the traditional way, cold outreach, in the traditional way of things, do you think it's still a valid concept, or do you think it's still working, or not?
Once again, everything depends. I do believe that cold outreach works on scale. So if your total addressable market is big enough and you can send your message and put it in front of the eyeballs of thousands, tens of thousands of people, that can work. If your target market is super limited, super niche. So for example, not that long ago, I jumped on a call with one of our prospects. They were in semiconductor space. There are probably 20 manufacturers in the world who do that. And that's their ICP essentially. They do a software and their ICP is semiconductor factories. So there are 20 companies in the world that do that. And obviously doing cold outreach here is madness. So in such case, I obviously recommend doing something organic, building a relationship, and just closing deals in a more traditional way. The basics are still here. The 3 pillars of outreach, the target audience that I've already mentioned, your offer, your messaging, making sure that it's relevant for the target audience, and choosing the right channel depending on the scale, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's email, whether it's WhatsApp or other social media apps.
Do you see any new or upcoming channels? Or maybe channels that you haven't explored so much and you're curious to see or test out?
We've tested WhatsApp not that long ago, but once again, due to privacy policies of the companies, etc., you actually need to create a pool of phone numbers in order to do mass outreach. And typically the most affordable ones are not from tier 1, tier 2 countries. So the geos of the phone numbers, they look suspicious from the get-go. And then when you receive a message from a contact outside of your contact list, you will get a pop-up saying that could be spam, ignore it or accept it. So I would say that WhatsApp, for example, is not the best lead gen channel right from the bat, but email and LinkedIn, we're exercising a lot.
Those are our traditional ones. They work. They're the most like reliable, I guess, long term, and you're not violating a lot of rules, especially if you're doing global outreach. How about personalization? Because as we mentioned, we get a lot of these messages on LinkedIn. There's a lot of automation when it comes to the outreach, especially on those type of channels. Do you practice personalization? Do you feel it's essential in all industries, or do you think it's only on the niche ones? Do you believe in it even? Because some people, they're like, just send to as many people as possible, like believe in the quantity instead of quality.
I do believe in personalization, but once again, to your point, most in the case-to-case, case-by-case level. There used to be a hype for personalization that we in our agency followed as well, because it sounded crazy, like the capacity of some of the tools such as Clay that we still use up to date, but in a very different manner. Like when we just discovered it, we started sending messages to people such as finding their HQ or their office location, and then finding the nearest Starbucks and sending a message such as like, hey, if you're in Seattle, like let's catch up on that corner Starbucks on, I don't know, Fifth Ave and Washington Street. And this is something that we believed would spark more meaningful, more like warmer conversations. But as statistics showed like not so much. I would say that it clearly was a pendulum. Like the lack of personalization, especially in such cases as attending conferences, or reaching out to some of your existing pipeline leads, etc., can hurt you, because you could do better work considering the amount of data that you have on hand. But at the same time, if you exercise it too much, you can spend a lot of credits, a lot of funds on making it more personable, and in the end of the day, don't get any meaningful results. So I think that right now pendulum kind of shifts back to the middle, to the balance, where you do it when it's necessary. So for example, when you're attending a conference and you know exactly the list of exhibitors that will be there, list of speakers that will be there, then you can personalize your messages and make it more relevant, because you will see these people in person in the end of the day. But doing it for like spray and pray campaigns, like large scale email campaigns, I think it is unnecessary.
I feel the same. And even the personalization, I have tested as well myself. It fails to sound organic. And then once you have so many teams use Clay or other types of tools to personalize their outreach, it starts, sounding the same. It's like the same AI agent reaching out and creating the same type of personalization. So then there's no more personalization, right? We read it and we're like, yeah, whatever, another generated, message. So you skip it.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. And I honestly still prefer to write the copy itself by myself or by any employee of ours, instead of dedicating it fully to ChatGPT or other models.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of mistakes, right, we see these are some of the mistakes, but when it comes to especially workflow optimization, what kind of mistakes do you see teams still make in any industry, right, in any vertical?
I would say that number one mistakes that we faced ourselves, so this is why I do consider it was a mistake, is overlooking data. Essentially, whenever you launch a campaign, it's really worthy to keep track of the performance of this campaign, see which offers works for which audience, what were the deliverability, what was the positive reply rate, and like other essential metrics. Because if you're not tracking it, there is a great chance of making the same mistake twice and just like moving in circles, instead of cutting out what's not working and focusing on what performs the best. So I think making data-driven decisions, tracking data, and having some sort of archive is essential for most of the sales teams.
Yeah, definitely. Why do you think we don't? I have seen that myself, right? A lot of times companies, they think data, it's like a secondary metric, or they don't even bother to look at the numbers. Do you think it's more because things are moving so fast and it's so complicated to even understand the data? Or do you think it's another reason why companies do not place so much attention to numbers, right?
Well, I think it really depends on the organizations. I think more mature organizations, they have stricter policies, they have the procedures built out. But if we're talking about the pool of less mature businesses, younger companies, younger professionals, they just don't have this experience. And such things can be easily overlooked until you find yourself in a position that you are relaunching the same sequence for the same target audience and it's performing even worse than last time. So then once you make this mistake yourself, you realize the importance of it and you try to shift things.
Do you think there is value added from any AI tools? So we know that personalization tools overall, they lack uniqueness and eventually the ROI is not there of whatever credits you're spending. But where do you feel there's the most value added from automation or any AI tools?
Well, it saves you tons of time at the end of the day. Whether you're sending messages or you're trying to analyze the statistics, it saves you a lot of time. We're sending probably tens of thousands of messages every day on behalf of our portfolio of clients daily. And obviously we get tons of out of office replies, positive replies, opt-outs and everything. And if we would manually sort out this whole batch of emails, we would need to hire like an entire factory or something. But with AI, it all can be done automatically. It can be fine-tuned. You can set up additional instructions of how you want this data to be analyzed, what criteria matter the most. Essentially, everything is done within seconds automatically. And depending on the integrations that you set up, you can do a really smooth data flow. So for example, you get a response, AI analyzes it within a second, it categorizes it as a positive reply, and positive reply automatically goes to your CRM to the right column, and then a triggered notification is also sent out to the sales rep who's responsible for this campaign. And essentially, it's an entire orchestra that works 24/7 that really makes things more efficient. It's not like AI for the sake of AI. It's actual value that I can see.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, not only simplifying the processes, but also helping the person, the account manager, whoever is in charge of the lead to handle faster the entire sales funnel and eventually, close the lead faster and then also increase overall revenue, which is important for most companies.
Right.
But yeah, do you see it anywhere else? I mean, that's where I see it. I feel like that's the biggest gap that it's feeling right now, making our overall life easier, faster, more organized CRMs. Do you see anything else or maybe upcoming ways and value that we will see AI take over or help with?
I'm kind of on the verge because being a teenager and reading all these books about artificial intelligence, especially those by George Orwell and like those anti-utopia things, it kind of makes you feel itchy in the back. But overall, I think that people try to make their life so effective, save so much time, but in the end of the day, not knowing what to do with the spare time. So I think it's very important to balance it out between what are you trying to achieve, whether it's actually effective, whether the time that you are getting can be reutilized in the most effective way, pleasant way. I don't know, like if you want to balance out your work-life balance or things like that. But in terms of the trends, I do think that agents, once they get there, will be a very powerful tool. Because right now, we do have an R&D department, and they're in charge of building so-called parsers. We use different language models, and they parse relevant data for us. For example, I don't know, conferences, participants, and stuff like that. So a lot of research work can be outsourced to machines. And I, as a salesperson, can focus on the building relationships, fostering them, and closing deals themselves. Yeah, I think agents will be will be a big trend and inherit a big chunk of work. Right now, it's still not super reliable. Sometimes it hallucinates, which I think everyone faced with. Sometimes it provides you with outdated information. So essentially, all the mistakes that human individuals could have done are still there. Once this flow becomes more flawless, I think we can start trusting them more, for sure.
Definitely. I have seen a few products and a few companies try utilize AI agents. It's still a gimmick, right? It's like, it's cute, it's fun. We look like we're working with automation, but in essentially the most important parts of the workflow are done by individuals. There is definitely support, right, from all these tools, but it's not necessarily as essential, or the company wouldn't like collapse without it. Once we reach to that point, I think that's where we're going to see things moving much faster also for companies. It's dangerous sometimes, as you mentioned, right? Because it's the company's workflows and revenue streams are reliant on a tool or an agent. But at the same time, whom do we trust more? An AI tool or a human that can, humans can act out similarly. So with people being scared of the AI taking over our lives and controlling our lives. And I'm always like thinking, but maybe it's slightly better for some tasks and not for others. So depending on the industry, right? I feel like for tech, it's good, but maybe other industries would have been a bit more dangerous. Where do you feel automation is still failing badly, that we haven't made a lot of progress the last at least like 10 months or a year?
Well, I think it's double-edged sword is everything. So for example, this the data sourcing aspect and hallucination for me, like it's still one of those aspects that prevents me from relying heavily on these tools without double checking them and making sure that everything is sound, everything is valid, and we can send it out. Because if you send information to a person and then you mentioned that they work in a completely different company, that by default kills all the legitimacy. So I think data sourcing is still like one of those parts. The innovation is there. I see a lot of startups, emerging startups, B2B startups, SaaS companies that keep building this language models, keep building those agents and constructors for agents and everything that supports the industry. But at the same time, there is also a pushback from the companies that own the data. I think you might have heard about those, not so recent already, probably 2 months back, there was a story when Amazon started blocking out Perplexity from visiting its resources. Because ultimately, those big tech companies that own the data, they don't want AI agents to interfere with their operations that much, visit their websites that much, and parse so much data from them. Because data is new money, new currency. I don't know how to explain it. So there is an innovation, there is a pushback for innovation, and I think it's really important to stay like on the news, knowing what's working, what's not, who's blocking whom, which technologies allow you to do like what you need, etc. But once again, only if you're in the space. Otherwise, it's more like an OCD.
Oh, definitely. It's like falling down the rabbit hole. I think that's the concept of the podcast, right? This is the entire concept was there are so many tools out there to understand which ones are good, which ones are even relevant to your industry that you need to even look out about. It takes time. And sometimes it's so overwhelming. And even the language, right? We see it again a lot in crypto. The language, the tech language lingo that it's used, it's so difficult to understand if you're not in the space. You don't understand what's happening. And the people in the industry insist to use the same words and the same kind of product concepts instead of making it easier for new users to understand what they're talking about and make it more attractive. It's like 100%. A weird hub, right? Yeah. So I feel the AI is doing a little bit better, but we still have words that if you're not into the tech world or like your average person, they have no interest or they're not as curious to learn more about it. So you need to make it simpler, easier, and relevant to what they're doing on the daily to get their attention as well.
Yeah. And once again, people are motivated by the outcomes and based on how this tech firms position themselves, it's more about the processes, like how to leverage this certain tool, how to build an AI agent. And like obviously for most of the sales leaders that are, I don't know, on average 40 plus years old, like it can be less relevant to them. They're more interested in the outcomes themselves that this technology can give them.
Oh yeah. Outcome, definitely solving someone's issues. It's the one that will definitely get their attention in the first place. But I still feel that, especially the younger generation, the overall attention is much shorter. So if it's too complicated, if you twist your brain a little too much, then you're going to lose their attention. So we try always to simplify the process, or we try always to simplify the length of explaining something to make it a little easier for them to pay attention to what we're talking about. And then, as you said, you have other generations, like the older generation, which they are comfortable with complex concepts, but at the same time, sometimes they're stuck with operating in a similar workflow that for them to change it completely, it's like, why are we doing this? It's working well, right? Do you see, or in terms of tools and workflows, I wanted to ask you, can you walk us through a real outreach flow for, let's say, setting up a company? You mentioned this very niche product or whatever one you want to mention, like your usual outreach flow.
The typical outreach flow starts, even before that, with a proper discovery, understand the ICP, making sure that we find the relevant people, making sure that we find the contacts that are up to date. We need to verify them, especially if these are emails, because if you're doing Apollo scraping, Apollo sourcing, if you run this context through any email verifier tool, you'll probably see that only 40% of this data is actually sendable and will not damage your email infrastructure. With LinkedIn, it's obviously easier, but you also need to take into account the capacity of the channel. Like, you cannot send so many LinkedIn connections or emails as you can blast with emails. So first of all, you need to understand the audience, the messaging that you're sending them. Then you need to understand which channel you'll be utilizing. If the product or service is more niche and it's worthy to focus on smaller pool of individuals, but having more meaningful conversation, probably LinkedIn will be a better option. You can get up and running within 24 hours and start sending using such automation tools as Lemlist, Dripify, Linked Helper. I don't know. There are tons of them. The functionality does not really differ from one to another. They're all great. Just make sure that you follow the limits and you don't get your or your client's account banned, because it can be a nightmare, especially if it's a sales leader who has spent, 15 years building his connection base of 4,000, 5,000 individuals. Like, if you do that, probably your relationship will be ended. With email, the flow is a little bit more complex. Once again, you need to build a proper email infrastructure. If we're talking about B2B space, I do not believe so much in newsletter type of email marketing. Like, when you're preparing one beautiful template that in the end of the day does not necessarily land to your mailbox, probably goes to spam or promotion folder by default, that no one actually revisits. So with email in today's world, if you want to make it more effective, you're building a proper email infra using one of the trustworthy providers such as Google or Outlook. And obviously it takes time to register, to acquire the domains, to set up the mailboxes, to warm them up. Because if you want to make sure that the deliverability is there, and it's one of the key metrics in the beginning, because you won't get any opportunities unless your emails are getting to the inboxes of your leads. You need to make sure that your email infra is warmed up, and this typically takes like a month. Last but not least, you need to understand what funnel are you building, what kind of offerings are you building. One of the most effective that we found recently are events. Whether these are in-person events and you're inviting someone to your office and you have an opportunity to talk to them in person, or webinars, online events, you need to set up the infrastructure in advance. Like, you're sending an invitation, you need to make sure that people are registering, they have an opportunity to see your landing page clearly, sign up, add this event to their calendar, send up all the notifications prior to the event to make sure that they attend, etc. So I would say that this is the average flow, once again, depending on the funnel that you're building, whether it's focused around just sending your offer or inviting people to events or connecting with leads from conferences. But in the end of the day, the three pillars remain the same: target audience, messaging, and the channel that you're utilizing.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned metrics, you mentioned deliverability. What other metrics matter to you, or are the ones that you pay the closest attention to once you set all this in motion?
So if we're talking about LinkedIn, whether these are connections or emails, obviously this is the acceptance rate, because this is the first frontier you need to bypass in order to be able to send your offer to the lead. So that's the first one. And the second one, which ultimately shows how effective your offering is, how like to what extent you found your product market fit / service market fit is positive reply rate. Because obviously you'll be getting a lot of replies, but in majority of the cases, these are like not relevant, or please discuss it with another colleague. So these are not positive replies. Positive replies is when someone says like, yeah, sure, like let's discover it. Here's a link to my calendar, or I would like to hear more, something like that. I would say that with LinkedIn, this is acceptance rate is the first metric, and then the positive reply rate. With emails, it's similar. You need to focus on deliverability, making sure that the emails you're sending are landing to the mailbox. And then positive reply rate is the key marker of effectiveness of your campaign. But that's in my humble opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it changes a lot, right? Depending on the industry, the type of product,
Right.
if it's B2C, B2B, well, mostly it's B2B. But in terms of the results, have you seen a decline, or have you seen anything change the past 10 months? I'm saying 10 months because I feel like that was the time frame where automation became like so common, or even like using ChatGPT for a basic tasks has become a very common process, even though it's like happening more than a year, 2 years now. But have you seen any results change, decline, maybe improve, especially through LinkedIn the past few months?
Despite of the fact that I've been running agency for past 3 years, I think we managed to successfully niche down pretty much like 10 to 5 months ago. We found our ICP. We found ideal customer profile. We found ICP of our ICP. So essentially clientele of our clients. And once we figured this out, things became way easier. Like once you understand the pain points, when you're experienced enough in which offers convert, which not, results improve significantly. The best campaign that we launched, which is clearly an outlier, it's not an industry standard, like pretty optimistic, is getting one positive reply. So essentially one lead per like 250 emails sent, which is consider the average size of the campaign of 15,000 emails, 20,000 emails. This is like 60 plus leads per email campaign, which is solid in B2B space. But that's one of the best campaigns that we've ever launched when we successfully found an ICP, and the offer that we created was so relevant. When the stars align, you're good. You can start booking meetings like, I don't know, like you're in a manufacturing. But on average, in the B2B space, I would say, depending on the ticket size of a product or a service, I would say that a solid metric is anywhere between 2K and 4K emails per one meeting booked, essentially. That's another metric. Like obviously positive replies are good, but then you need to book a meeting. So I would say that booking meetings is also one of the very important metrics.
Oh yeah, 100%. And again, depending on the industry, for some industries that's easier, and then maybe the flow or the entire cycle, it's more complicated. But then the meeting, it's easy. And then in other industries, getting that first meeting is very hard. But then the sales cycle is shorter because it's a very relevant prospect. Yeah. So the flow, it's like much shorter.
Essentially, kind of wrapping up with your questions, whether we found any changes. Yes, our results improved significantly, but that's mostly because we spent so much time and effort just trying, testing, tracking, and then shifting our approach. And once we found this ICP, this flow, things became like way better. But if we didn't spend this effort, this time, this funds that we invested into things, probably we wouldn't have found this the status quo. But once again, it's important to understand that nothing is permanent. Things are changing. So right now, yes, we're blessed with good statistics, but then, I don't know, new privacy policies or new trends can come in, and we will need to readjust once again.
I mean, it's important to always adjust. It's part of especially what's coming next. It's going to be moving much faster and adjusting much faster. Now, LeadGet has been ranked in the top 10 of Smartlead user worldwide, especially by replies and the deals created. I wanted to hear from you, besides Smartlead, are there any other tools that you personally use the most or that you see working best right now?
Honestly, we didn't really have a strong preference for email automation tool. There are like a bunch of fantastic email automation tools out there. Smartlead is one of them. Email Bison is another. I don't know. There are really a lot of them. They have pretty basic functionality of uploading your lead list and then drafting a sequence and then making sure that it gets delivered, connecting your email infrastructure and then making sure that it gets delivered. So I really don't have a strong preference. I think it's really depends on your use case. Which CRM are you using, which native integrations your email automation tool has. So, for example, I prefer to use the ones that are kind of major, like HubSpot is one of them, robust and sturdy, as it's nominated in the industry. But essentially, any automation tool, email automation tool would have an integration built in with HubSpot. Otherwise, you can use, different mechanics with webhooks, Zapier, Make, and other tools to bypass this native integration. But once again, really depends on which tool stack you're using.
Yeah. Do you feel we have put more attention, or we see, because personally I feel like we see a lot of what we call tools that are helping overall with enrichment and the logic of the outreach or the logic of the sequence on the customer, but not a lot of tools focusing on the leads itself, right? We have Apollo in this case, which has the largest database. And then we have some other tools that are currently helping I will talk about the crypto space, that they help a lot when it comes to leads or a lead flow on Telegram. So for leads that are focused mostly on Telegram, and then we have LinkedIn, but obviously it's a weird gray industry. And overall, having access to all this data and all this huge database of users, some of them, being aware of it and some of them not being so aware of it. Do you feel any of these tools are overhyped, especially the tools that are focusing on the logic of the sequence or enrichment, lookalikes and so on, instead of the actual database and content?
Well, yeah, in my humble opinion, it's a little bit overhyped as everything. I think like all these tools that you've mentioned, whether it's Apollo or ZoomInfo, they do one job very well. They aggregate contact data, and then based on some of the most basic filters, such as industry space, headcount, geographic location, you can export a pretty major list. But then once again, as I mentioned, it is worthy to run it by email verifier to make sure that the email addresses that you've downloaded, they are actually addressable, because a lot of them are catch-alls or spam filters or just outdated information. Only 40% of this information will be sendable at the end of the day, as our practices, in our practice, in our experience at least. So I think like these are the essential parts of the context sourcing that we focus on and we recommend other companies to focus on. And then like all these add-ons that were developed in the recent days, we tried to keep track of them for sure. The lookalike functionality sometimes helps, especially if your industry is pretty unique, such as crypto space, and which is still just emerging in terms of being present, being not so niche, being widespread. There are not so many crypto contacts on Apollo, for example, or LinkedIn Sales Navigator, or wherever it is. So having this lookalike functionality really helps, because it allows you to map out this unique, crypto exchange that you found and find more companies like it. So once again, everything really depends on the use case, but in my humble opinion, it's worthy to focus on the basics, on the fundamentals, the basic filters that they all provide.
Yeah, exactly. And also to use tools for what they're the most well-known. You're right. There are certain brands and tools that they do have alternative, services that they offer or enrichments, but then at the same time, they're not as robust, or they're very basic in their usage. In terms of if someone wanted to start today, someone has a startup and they want to start setting things up, right? What should they do first? What tools they should try? Maybe what mistakes they should avoid? Except reaching out to you, which is what I would recommend. If they had to start setting things up themselves, what would you say they should, from where they should start?
Considering that these are startups and not all of them have product market fit yet, I would try to move as fast as possible with as minimum investment into outreach infrastructure as possible. So I would probably focus on LinkedIn as long as there is sufficient presence of leads from this industry on LinkedIn. Because once again, if we're talking about Web3 and specifically crypto startups or neobanks or I don't know, this prediction market, something that is new and emerging, they're not there yet. But if the startups focus on more traditional things and there is an abundance of such leads on LinkedIn, I would suggest focusing on them as a channel because you can get it up and running pretty fast. You can launch within 24 hours. I mean, this is what we do for our clients. But if you're doing it for yourself, you can just set it up like right now. Within 15, 20 minutes, if you know your portfolio of clients and prospective leads. And then, that will allow you to iterate pretty fast. I would probably invest additionally into emails because emails allow you to bypass this connection request step. And you can send messages directly to people and they will get email notifications that they got your offer, essentially. So essentially, my main recommendation for startups is testing offers as fast as possible. And then once you have found the offer that converts, the audience that works the best for you, you can invest additional funds into setting up a email infrastructure and just like scaling up, essentially. You know your audience, you know their titles, you know where they based. You're just acquiring larger data sets and you're sending more messages at the end of the day. So that would be my roadmap for such cases, probably.
How about the future? I mean, we see things moving fast. You stay on top of things constantly, so you can always update and improve things on the workflow itself. But what do you think is next for outreach and automation? And maybe what excites you the most or you want to see the most change or improve?
There are some bad news and good news as everywhere. So like on the bad news front, I think everyone should be prepared for new policies from the like email infrastructure providers, Google, Outlook, because they are the giants. They set up the rules, and everyone who's doing email outreach into a certain extent, they understand how dependent we are on their policies. So it's important to make sure that we stay compliant. For example, we work on the US market and we need to be CAN Spam Act compliant, which means that we need to honor opt-outs, people who are not interested. We need to make sure that we do not follow up with them. And essentially, if such things are overlooked, that's a red flag for the email infrastructure providers that they need to restrict their policies even further. So I would suggest that we all need to find a common ground where we follow the rules. They don't make our lives harder. So that's one of the trends, making sure that we are, as growth hackers, are balancing on this fine line, but not crossing it. So that's on the negative front, I would say. And on the positive front, I'm obviously excited for the technology, which will make things work even smoother. You just like press a button and get a lead. That's essentially the system that we're building, no matter how complex the processes that are behind the scenes are. But essentially, the agents that source the information accurately and then feed this information to your sending tool, whether it's LinkedIn or email, and then it sends, it parses, lead data automatically, and then filters all the replies, and then sends you notification that the lead is in your CRM. So like that's the future that I'm excited about. But at the same time, I like the game. I'm not here for the results only. I genuinely like the process, like this. All the hardships and the fruits that the journey gives me at the end of the day. So despite of my desire to automate things and make them more efficient, I still don't want to lose this interest, this nerve, essentially.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'm happy you mentioned also a little bit about compliance and making sure that we're not violating everything, which is it's going to happen. There is no questions there.
Yeah.
It's like a brand new world. And until we figure out and there are regulations in place, we're going to definitely see a lot of brands, companies, bad actors as well, right? Violating or abusing the new tech. It's pretty common. It happens literally every few years. We see that happening. And it's part of, as you said, it's part of the game. You cannot have it all.
Right.
And sometimes when we have this testing phase where people go crazy and there's zero business ethics, you learn the product better. You learn also what's possible. And maybe they're bad actors, but you can also take that and maybe find a way to utilize it in for a positive outcome, not to harm someone. But yeah, I completely agree with you. The being able to observe and zoom out and not look at the bad or the good, but see it as a big change. It's part of the game. It's part of the fun as well. And how about you personally? Where people can find you, or how can people reach out and find out more about what you do and what's possible with LeadGet?
Well, I still do believe that as a business, the most appropriate space in LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find there our company page. I do my best to post there occasionally and create this presence overall. Because once again, no matter how good your product and our oversaturated industry, it's important to stay visible. So yeah, I would say find me on LinkedIn as Rodi Patlis and find LeadGet as our agency.
Sounds great. Perfect. Rodi, this has been an exceptionally thoughtful conversation. Really excited that you mentioned a few things. ICP of the ICP is what I'll keep from this conversation. It's something that I haven't heard much. I have heard it a couple of times, but not a lot of people that go that far. And it's like that's the easiest way to close. If you think about it, any deals, you find the pain, right? So if you know the ICP of your ICP, then you know how to help them best. So it's like digging deep and understanding who you're talking to in a more personalized level. This has been a great conversation. I'm really excited to speak again in the future and see what's coming next for our industry, but generally the world of automation. Do you have maybe any last words or anything else that you would like to share with us?
Really, thank you for having me here. I hope you didn't get tired listening to my monologues, and I hope that it was valuable and useful in the end of the day.
Absolutely. Extremely valuable. And I'm really excited to this episode to go live. This conversation, I think, has helped and will help a lot of people understand a bit better outreach, automation, and overall where they're heading. So make sure you follow the podcast. We're going to have more and more guests joining us to enrich your knowledge, but also understanding of this industry and the world in general. So thank you, Rodi, so much for being here today. And this is Decoding Oblivion. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Cheers.
That was Rodi, co-founder of LeadGet, a B2B marketing agency. If this conversation helped you understand where outreach and automation are heading, make sure to follow the podcast. I'm Eva, your host, and this is Decoding Oblivion.